Hey everybody, thanks for coming to watch the show. So finally, after months of waiting, yesterday, The Mandalorian finally came out, and I absolutely loved almost everything about it. In my opinion, it was a true Star Wars story, and I can't wait to see more from it. If you haven't seen it yet, I definitely recommend that you do. Not only is this a Star Wars event that you do not want to miss, but in this video I'm going to be going through some pretty major spoilers for the first episode, so if you haven't watched it, please do that if you don't want some important things revealed. If you were let down by any of the previous Star Wars movies Disney has released, I think that this is something you can really enjoy. A lot of the complaints I've heard about those movies are that they just didn't feel like a Star Wars thing, or they did something wrong with the character, or they just plain didn't need to happen. While I've enjoyed all of the recent Star Wars media to some extent, I do get those criticisms, so I understand if some people want to just write off The Mandalorian simply because it's a Disney creation. But trust me when I say that this is an amazing achievement, not just for Star Wars, but for TV and streaming in general. The production value of this show alone is just amazing, and it feels more like a short film than an episode of TV. And it's great to see them put all of the resources and effort that Disney has into something Star Wars like this. So in this video, I want to talk about 4 things I really liked in the first episode, but like pretty much everything, this isn't perfect, so there were a couple things that I didn't really like, but I'll talk about those in a few minutes. So let's get right into it with my first selection. The first thing I liked was the overall character of the Mandalorian. I really loved how he walked in the footsteps of Boba and Jango Fett in the way his character handled things and interacted with people. While Jango and Boba may not be actual Mandalorians, they are the only thing that some people may know about that type of character if they haven't watched the Clone Wars or Rebels, so it's nice to see continuity in that regard. Although Jango has more lines than Boba by far, neither of them ever said much in any of the movies, and that is definitely true here as well. The Mandalorian generally keeps pretty quiet and only talks when something needs to be said. He has a couple of humorous lines, but overall his speech is really direct, and it usually comes with some sort of veiled or just straight-on threat. He also carries himself well, too. His pace is pretty slow for the most part when he's not in action, and it conveys this overall sense that he's not in a hurry, but he definitely has a mission, and he's more than capable of completing it. I really love his combat as well, and there's definitely plenty of it, even just in this first little episode. In the first episode, we get to see his skills in hand-to-hand combat, blasters, and as well as his various tools like the rope snare and flamethrower. I really liked pretty much everything about his character, and I cannot wait to see more about his past and his motivations. The second thing I really liked is the tone and setting of the show. Although we aren't told which planets this Mandalorian is on during this episode, we do know that they are obviously something that is taking place in Star Wars. This first snow planet that we see him on, it could be Hoth, and it looks like, just a snowy planet in general, but it could be something that we've seen before, or it could be completely new. We don't really know. The desert planet feels a lot like Tatooine, and it most likely is, judging by the landmarks and the building styles that we see, but I love that no one said that it was. It doesn't really matter. We just know that it's Star Wars. The show is so full of familiar creatures like Rhodians and whatever species Salacious B. Crumb is, and along with all the other recognizable Star Wars tropes, it's just instantly familiar that even if it's not a place we've seen before, we know that it's taking place in Star Wars. I love the way that things also seem sort of lawless and in disarray with the fall of the Empire, with crime taking place all over, and the way things have been turned on their head. Instead of seeing like rebels hiding out in a secret base planning an attack on the Empire, we see an Imperial cell basically hiding in this secret room, and stormtroopers that look like they've been living in that armor for a decade or longer. One of the greatest things about the original Star Wars movies was just how lived in and sometimes even dirty the galaxy felt, and that's something that I believe The Mandalorian has definitely captured. The third thing I like is that so far this is a completely new story with characters we've never seen and stories we have no idea of how they'll unfold. As I've mentioned in a couple other videos, with a lot of the recent Star Wars stories that we've seen, we kind of know how things are going to pan out. With Rogue One, you knew the team would succeed with getting the Death Star plans. You knew that Han was going to live through Solo and end up as
Han Solo. I'm Captain of the Millennium Falcon.
But with The Mandalorian, we really have no idea what's going to happen next. Pretty much the entire marketing campaign really only showed us things from this first episode and little clips from future ones, so a lot of the things that I thought were going to happen didn't. They kind of portrayed things in a way that made it feel like certain characters or settings were going to be a bigger part than they were, which, that's pretty cool that they kind of keep things a mystery like that, and I expected that. But some things, like the way this was framed right here, this shot of IG-11 and the Mandalorian, kind of made it feel like they were going to be a team and just kind of go through the show together. But that went in a completely different direction. I was a little bit disappointed about that, but we'll get more into that in a second. The way this episode ended in particular leaves me completely baffled as to what's going to happen next. Again, this is a major spoiler for the episode, so if you haven't seen it, please go back and watch that and then come back to my video if you care about, things like this being revealed. So the inclusion of, for lack of a better word, a Yoda baby is something I definitely did not see coming at all. As far as I know, there's only been 3 creatures of Yoda's species in all of Star Wars movies and media. That is Yoda himself, Yaddle from Episode 1, and Vandar Toker from Knights of the Old Republic. And in none of those cases is their species ever named or their planet of origin stated, and there's pretty much no information on them except what we hear from Yoda and that Jedi Master and KOTOR. So I'm beyond excited to learn more about them and see how this story will play out. This Reddit user here, that mighty Bosch, bleh, I don't know. But anyway, this guy, he had an interesting theory on this inclusion of this Yoda creature here, stating that maybe the reason that the Empire wants this baby is so the Emperor's doctors can kind of help unravel the mystery of longevity that Yoda's species has, because Yoda isn't immortal, we know that, but he did live to be 900 years old, so that's a really, really long time. That's not quite immortal, but it's pretty close. It's closer than any human would ever get to. So if, maybe that could play into how the Emperor came back in The Rise of Skywalker. We know that, or we think that he's coming back based on the trailers. So it'd be pretty cool if that kind of plays into The Rise of Skywalker. I've heard some rumors that maybe this show is going to do that. So that would be pretty cool. And either way, I think this is a really cool inclusion. We don't know anything about Yoda's species, so having something related to that in the show is going to be awesome. The fourth thing I really liked about the show was all the little Easter eggs and connections it left to previous movies and media from throughout the Star Wars galaxy and all of the lore. We hear the Mandalorian's first bounty talk about Life Day, referring back to that god-awful Star Wars holiday special. I think that has been referenced before, maybe like the Clone Wars or Rebels, so I'm not sure if that's canon now, but God help us if it is. We also hear another reference to the holiday special, I think, when Nick Nolte's Ugnaught character speaks about the Mandalorian riding the Mythosaur, which I think is the creature that Boba Fett rides in the pretty much only good part of the holiday special, which is the cartoon section there. And I think that that creature is a Mythosaur. I could be wrong, so don't quote me on that. But if so, that's pretty cool. That's another little connection there. As well as the Mandalorian's rifle just being a straight-up copy of the one that Boba uses in that cartoon. Even if none of that is actually connected to that holiday special, really, it's still kind of a cool reference, and this coupled with the familiar imagery like the stormtroopers and the creatures frozen in carbonite on the Mandalorian ship helps us to really feel like we're in Star Wars once again, and this show really wears its inspiration and history on its sleeve. I think The Mandalorian is the first Disney-created Star Wars property since Rogue One that has really captured the feel, look, and attitude of Star Wars so well. And this was only just a small section of it, so if this continues throughout the season, I think we're really in for a lot of cool Easter eggs and callbacks to a lot of the things we love about Star Wars and really like to see. So I'm extremely excited to see more of that sort of thing. So now that I've talked about all the things I really enjoyed in the show, I want to briefly talk about a few things that I didn't really like and how I hope that they will change in the show going forward. My overall impression of it is still extremely positive, and I definitely recommend it to you guys if you haven't seen it. But if you have seen it, hopefully you watched that before you came and saw this, because I pretty much ruined the whole episode. But these complaints that I have are very minor and pretty much nitpicks, so I'm just going to talk about them both in the same section rather than splitting them up, because they kind of run together anyway. So the things that I didn't like about the show was the length and the way that it was paced. The runtime for the show was only about 40 minutes, and I mean that's longer than like a Clone Wars episode or a Rebels episode, But this is a live action show, so I kind of expected it to be at least an hour, if not longer. And, you know, there are shows that are live action that aren't that length, but I was really expecting that to be the case with a Star Wars show. And a lot of things happen inside that 40 minutes that I feel like could have been drawn out a little bit more to let us know a few more things about the characters and the setup for how things were going to unfold. That time limit was pretty restricting in my opinion. I think they tried to cram maybe a little too much into that one episode. I really enjoyed the show, but I feel like maybe this first one was just packed with a little bit more than the rest of it, hopefully, just so maybe it can kind of hook people right out of the gate. So moving forward, hopefully each episode will take a little bit more time to flesh things out in that regard. It might sound like I want the show to be like a slow burn where nothing really happens, it's just dialogue and setting and all that stuff, but that's not what I'm saying at all. I mainly just mean that I want more time with all of these cool characters that have been created before we move on to the next scene and don't get to see them anymore just for the sake of moving the plot along at a fast pace. For example, we were introduced to a lot of characters in the show pretty quickly that just kind of disappeared within a few minutes of us meeting them, such as IG-11 and Nick Nolte's Ugnaught character. The droid in particular, I thought, really kind of fell flat compared to what I was expecting from him. He was really hilarious, and I was looking forward to seeing a lot of interesting dialogue with him and more scenes with that guy, because the way he was like spinning around and just the kind of deadpan way he kept saying he was going to self-destruct, I thought he was just great. And the droids are usually a really great part for me for Star Wars, such as K2SO from Rogue One, and of course HK-47 from Knights of the Old Republic, as well as all the other classic droids that we know and love. So when The Mandalorian just blasted IG-11, I was a little bit let down by that. Of course, I get why he did it. He was trying to save the Yoda Baby, but I was still a little bit let down that we don't get to see more of IG-11. Similarly, I really liked the Ugnaught character Nick Nolte played, and I thought he had some really funny lines, especially like his little catchphrase, "I have spoken." And we don't get a whole lot of time with him either. So I think there's a few scenes in the trailers that show him in settings we didn't see in this episode, so he's likely going to turn up again, but I hope that going forward we're given more time with these really unique and interesting characters that are being created, because it'd be a real shame to not get to know more about them before they are moved on from. In the next remaining section of the episodes of the show, I hope that not only the runtime is a little bit longer, maybe a full hour, but the plot and the pace remains entertaining, but maybe just a little bit, even given a little bit more time to breathe and just more story take place in that amount of time. Like I said, those are pretty nitpicky complaints, so even if the next few episodes are exactly the same length and they move at the same speed as this one, I'm still going to really enjoy the show, but I hope that we are given as much time as I would like to get to know these really awesome new characters in the Star Wars galaxy. But that's my thoughts on the first episode of The Mandalorian, all the things I really liked and a couple of things I was a little bit unsure of, but I'd like to know what you guys thought about it as well. So let me know down in the comments what you think, and if you want to see more of me, check me out over on Twitch at the Ben Jammy. I'm going to be playing the new Star Wars game, Jedi Fallen Order, when it comes out this Friday, and I'm going to be playing it quite a bit going forward, so come check me out over there if you want to see what the game looks like and hang out with me and chat on Twitch as well. Also, check me out over on Instagram at the Ben Jammy Broadcast for channel updates, as well as some cool pictures of comics and collectibles and other cool things like that. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.